8:23, we're back with a live shot from Century Plaza Hotel and Spa. We all want to be rich, Blair Manton. Maybe you can help. Sands & Associates are debt management expert, and we're talking about credit card balances and how to avoid the minimum payment trap. And before we get into the details of the trap, if you look across the board with Canadians, what are some of our habits, money-wise, of how we're handling credit card balances?
Well, there's a bit of a divide, right? So just over slightly more than a majority, so about 60% of Canadians, as of last year, they paid their credit card bills off in full every month. They never paid interest. This year, that went down to about 55%. So it's still majority of people aren't paying interest, but it's getting worse every year, and a solid just under half of people, they are paying interest every month. They are paying minimum payments, so it's a growing problem.
Now, how do you calculate? How do credit cards, is there a standard formula of how they calculate this actual minimum payment?
Yeah, there actually isn't a standard formula, and that's part of the mystery for consumers and why people can just, pay it each month and not really think about it. But each of the banks can do it a little bit differently. So it's usually about 1 to 3% of your balance outstanding. But I looked in detail at one of the banks in particular, RBC, and the way they calculate it is it's whatever interest you were charged in the month plus $10. So if you can imagine when you're making that payment each month, it might be a $200 payment. Your interest might be $190. $10 is what actually draws your balance down.
So if there was an example, a hypothetical scenario, and you had $6,000 on your credit card, and you were just making a minimum payment each month, how long would it take to pay this thing off?
Well, this one really rocked my world when I put these numbers together, because let's say it's a store credit card, one of the local department stores, their interest rates are a little higher. They're about 29%. You got a $6,000 balance, Riaz, 53 years.
Oh, that's it?
53 years to clear that balance, yeah.
So it's important that we're aware of some of these factors. So what should consumers consider with the credit cards when you look at some of the benefits that they provide?
Yeah. Well, I would say, don't get hoodwinked, don't get misdirected by some of the benefits and forget about the cost. So rewards programs. So if you think about, I'm going to get a reward, whether it's Aeroplan miles or some other sort of cashback reward, typically that's 1 to 1.5% at the most value. But your interest, if you don't pay that off each month, is probably 2% just for that month at, 24% interest. And that reward you got once, but if you're paying a minimum payment every single month, you're paying interest.
What about the factor of cash advances off a credit card?
Yeah, that's huge as well. So you got to think, usually for cash advances, you're paying interest right from the day that you take the money out, as opposed to a grace period when you make a purchase on a credit card. So right away, that's worse because you pay interest more quickly. But oftentimes, there's a special rate for cash advances, and it might be as much as 15% higher than some of your standard rates. Cash advances are normally maximum rate charged right away, so you really got to be careful with those.
And if some people are getting proactive about savings and they have it in their account, they're holding it in their account versus paying off that credit card balance, how do you bridge the gap? Yeah,
and this can be a little bit counterintuitive, but I would say to anybody that's carrying credit card debt, stop saving for now and start reducing that credit card debt. There's no way, unless you're even Warren Buffett, he doesn't average 20 or 30% return on his investments every year. That's what you're paying on your credit card debt, is probably 20 to 30%. So a dollar is a dollar, and your dollar is going to be better spent if you're reducing your credit card debt as opposed to adding to savings.
And I know emotionally it can be overwhelming. Lori and I, we talk about this all the time, of when you know there's debt, but you don't want to look directly at it. Sometimes you just need to take inventory. So as a starting point, when we're battling through things, where do we begin?
Yeah, I would just start by making a simple budget and figure out, what extra can you put towards your debt. If all you're making is the minimums, try to find some extra space in your budget. And the way you deploy that extra money is you write down all of your debts and order them by highest interest to lowest interest. Make all the minimums whenever you can, because obviously that's going to hurt your rating if you don't. But all your extra money, start with the highest interest first and just knock off your debts as you go along if you've got extra money in your budget. If you don't have extra money in your budget, then you probably need to talk to a debt expert like myself, and we can help you figure out how you can restructure things and get off this 53-year train.
When you've got your plan set, how often do you encourage some of your clients to consistently check in and make sure you're on the right path?
Oh, every month. If you've got a budget, if you're not revisiting that every month and, making course corrections, you really don't have a budget. You've just got, a bit of a dream out there. So a budget should be something every month you're checking in, actual versus planned, and making some adjustments along the way.
And for credit card interest rates, what do you see as the best competitive rate out there, whether it's a bank, maybe an airline, maybe a store credit card like you mentioned? What gives you the best rate?
Well, working from worst to best, store credit cards are typically the highest interest, worst deal for consumers. Even money market payday loans are even worse than that. But if you think, if you approach your bank a low rate interest card, you might be able to get that for, low double-digit percentages, maybe around 10, 12% or so. That's a lot better than 19 or 20%, which is your standard card. And you can often get a low-rate card just by having the conversation. They won't offer it to you right off the bat because it's less profitable, but if you go in and this is what I want, or I'll take my business elsewhere, you might be able to get yourself a low-rate card that'll make things better off.
They just name drop. Blair sent me. Okay,
course,
low-rate
I'll
card
get you everywhere.
it is. Well, listen, an excellent resource. You see the website on screen for debt management. If it can be an assist, Blair and his crew can definitely help out. Appreciate you coming by.
My pleasure.
All right, we'll take a break. More top news stories coming up, including checking in with Greg Harper on the beach this morning. Greg?